Today I'll talk about performance management. It is a part of human resource management. So performance management is an integrated process that consolidate goal setting, number one. Number two, employee training and development. Number three, employee performance appraisal. And finally, rewarding the employee depending on his or her performance. So all these processes are known as performance management. In performance management, the supervisors work with the subordinates. They sit together and they define the goal of subordinate. They sit together and they define what should be the goal for subordinate for the coming period or coming year or coming 6 months or coming month. Then develop employee capabilities through training, measure and review employee performance in order to what? Reward the performance. So, performance goal, they both sit together and define the goal of subordinate, but the goals are linked with the goal of the firm. So, they are linked with the strategic goal of the firm. Performance management is a continuous process. It is not a one-time process that you sit together on 1st January and decide for rest of the year. It is a continuous process. How it is continuous process, we will learn through the following slides. So performance appraisal, what is the difference between the performance appraisal and performance management? Performance appraisal is you assess the performance of your employee, and performance management is you not only assess but you manage the performance. So, what are the differences? Performance appraisal is an isolated, mechanistic, human resource driven approach. It is owned by human resource department and it is related to how well was the work done. So this is the only question which is answered through performance appraisal, that how well was the work done by the employee. In contrast, performance management is a continuous, integrated, business driven, aimed at development of organization and people. So performance management is a holistic approach. It is owned by line management. So your supervisor is involved in performance management, not the HR person. In performance appraisal, HR department is involved, but in performance management, your supervisor of your own department is involved. And the question is, what can be done to help employee perform as effectively as possible? So this is the goal is different of performance management and performance appraisal. So what is the utility of performance management in human resource management? Performance management is involved in all the activities of human resource, and activities of human resource we have learned in our previous talks also include HR planning, recruitment, selection, personnel decisions, career planning, development, feedback, motivation, development, training and development, compensation, reward, and employee relations. So these are all activities of human resource which we already know. Now, what are the types of performance management? So the performance appraisal are of two types. One is evaluation and the other is developmental. So for evaluation, it is to validate the selections or it is for bonuses and incentives or promotions. So you do the evaluation of employee performance. So it is an evaluative method and you reward accordingly. You reward the employee accordingly. Whereas the developmental type is to give feedback to the employee, to motivate the employee, to identify the training and development of the employee, to help in career planning of the employee, and to help in human resource planning. So these two kinds of appraisals are there. So the guideline is organizations should have at least two appraisals in a year, at least two. One should be for developmental purpose, the other for evaluative purpose, because both the purposes are to be solved in an organization. We need to evaluate the performance to compensate the employee. Moreover, we need we need to know the need of training and development of our employees. So these two kind of performance appraisals should be done at least twice in a year. So what are the steps of performance management? The first step is identify the dimensions. We will go into detail of each and every step. So first step is identify the dimensions of job performance. Then you communicate the performance standard. Then determine who will conduct the appraisal. Then you identify the appropriate method for performance appraisal. And finally, at the end, you communicate the result of performance appraisal to the employee, because this communication is very important. You do the appraisal, you do not communicate to the employee will not improve. For example, in classroom, we take your exam and we provide you the marks of your result of your examination so that you can improve. If we do not communicate your result, how will you improve? You will not know your status. So this last step is very important, communicating timely the appraisal result to employees. So the first step was dimensions of job performance. The dimensions can be trade based, behavior based, or result based. Trace based dimensions, for example, a trait of an individual. So what are the traits? Traits are like attitude of your employee, creativity of your employee, initiativeness, drive, accountability. So these traits are communicated to the employee that we will appraise your performance on the basis of uh, these criteria. We will assess your trait. The second the second criteria may be behavior based. So tasks related to behavior, like how our employee they communicate with the customer, how they behave with the customer, are uh, they are they behaving properly with the customer. So these are the behavior based. Then there is result based criteria, which is tangible output. This is important in the product industry. We are in the service industry. So our product is intangible, more or less, with a little bit of tangible component. For production industry, the result based is very important. For example, a toy manufacturer company will assess that how many toy an employee has made in previous month. So these kind of the criteria are result based. So for our service industry, trade based and behavior based are important. So this was about dimensions of job performance. Then what performance standards? So performance standards are what should be the standard of these criteria. The example which I have given you, like how many toys that employee will produce, how many bicycle will be produced by an employee, manufactured. So these are the standard. So performance standard define the expected level of performance, goals or target, and they should be determined before the work is performed and communicated clearly to the employee. The standard should be realistic. It should be, achievable. It should not be like impossible to attain. It should be realistic, achievable. It should be specific, and it should be clearly stated in quantifiable and measurable term. And the third, who will do the appraisal? So appraisal can be by the manager or supervisor. This is the most common thing which come in our mind, that appraisal is done by our superior. No, appraisal can be done by an employee himself or herself. So that is known as self appraisal. And the appraisal can be done by subordinate. That is known as upward appraisal. For example, students can appraise the performance of teachers. So that will be the upward appraisal. Then there is something known as peer appraisal. Your friend, your colleague will do your appraisal. That is known as peer appraisal. Then team appraisal, a team will be constituted and it will do your appraisal. Then customer appraisal, customer will give feedback about your behavior, trait, or results. Then there can be a multi-source feedback. So these are the sources of performance management who will do the performance appraisal. So what are the methods? So methods depend on the criteria. So one was trade based, the other was behavior based, and the third was result based. So the trade based. So in trade we have learned that in trade there are various dimensions like attitude, creativity, initiativeness, drive, accountability. These can be assessed as by using graphic rating scale. So in graphic rating scale, we can categorize the trait as outstanding, average, or poor. The other method is forced choice method, in which we are forced, the person who is conducting the appraisal is forced to assess the employee in two categories, either good or bad. So it is a forced choice method. There is no in between categories. Then there is a essay method. You write a paragraph about your subordinate, the person of whom appraisal is being done. Then there is a ranking method. You rank all the employees. For example, I rank all the students, and student rank all the teachers. So that is ranking method. Then there is something known as force distribution method. It is by using a statistical distribution, which I told you, normal frequency distribution, a bell-shaped curve, which you have learned in your first year. So this was these are the methods which can be used on trade-based criteria. Then behavior-based criteria, how you behave with your uh, customers, how you behave with your colleagues. These are all behavior-based. So in behavior-based, how will we do the appraisal? We will make a register that our employee have misbehaved with this customer on this date at this time. All these things are recorded in a critical incident register. So that is known as critical incident method. That is record of favorable and unfavorable actions which are done by the employee. We can use checklist also, and we can use behavior anchored rating scale. Then third is result based. Result based, I told you about, it is used in production industry, and uh, so it is about how many items a person will manufacture or produce. So this is very important. Communication of appraisal. It is also known as appraisal interview. It should be an ongoing, continuous feedback. So it should also be a continuous process. It should not be like we give you feedback after end of the month. It should be continuous. That yesterday you have done something wrong, so please modify this action. So it should be structured, and it should be soon after the end of the appraisal period. Communication must not be delayed. And Of course, we can conduct two feedback sessions, one for developmental, another for evaluative purpose, and focus on performance deficiency itself, not on the person. This is important. We should not focus on you. For example, we should not focus that uh, uh, you have done something wrong. We should say that something wrong has been done. We should focus on the action, not on the person. We should not blame that person, and we should not, of course, issue threat to the self-esteem of the our employee. So these can be one-way communication, which is known as tell and sell approach. Only you provide feedback to the employee. It may be a two-way communication. Employee will also tell you something about his or her problem, and you listen to that problem. That is two-way communication. And the third is mutual problem solving. Both of you sit together, your employee and yourself, and then decide where the problem is, how can we solve the problem. So that is the mutual problem solving approach. So what are the problems in performance management? So problems include ambivalence on the part of manager, ambivalence on the part of appraisee, and system design and implementation problem. These are certain problems which are there. So, rater-based errors and biases like varying standard. So, for example, to assess a employee Mr. X, I use some other standard, and for assessing employee Mr. Y, I have used another standard, some strict standard I have used. So we should not use the various varying standard. We should use a consistent and same standard for assessing each and every employee. There is something known as recency effect. If an employee have done something wrong yesterday, and it is like it is fresh in my mind, so I give him poor marks. This should not be there. This is known as recency effect. You should assess him over the period of time. Then a primacy effect. Your worker has done something, something very good, and you are impressed. You are primed. That is known as primacy effect. These are certain problems which are rater-based errors. Then there is known as central tendency error. I will give you, I will give each and every student 50% marks. This is known as central tendency error. Even the bright student, I will give him 55. Even the student who has not performed well, I will give him 45. So I will be around 50%. Then there is something known as leniency error. I will give all the employees good feedback, good marks. Then there is something known as strictness error. I will be very strict. Then there is unfortunately personal bias error on the basis of certain feature of the employee. There may be a halo effect, that is effect of one criteria influence that of other criteria. I am very impressed with the with one of the feature of my employee, and I will give him good marks. And the contrast error, for example, in examination, a bright student enter in my room. I am examiner, and the student is very bright. I gave him like 85 marks out of 100. Then suddenly an average student entered, and on comparison to this previous student, uh, I give him very low marks. He was average student. He deserved 55 marks, but I gave him 25 because it is actually a contrast. Previously, student was very good. He has answered, he or she have answered all the questions. So this should not be there. Contrast error. Then similar to or different to me error. If if your employee is very similar to you, then you give him uh, good marks. Then sampling error. So these are some of the rater-based errors and biases we should be very careful if you are appraising somebody. So how can we improve the performance management? I think this is my last slide. So these are the guidelines. One is that we should do uh, uh, a separate performance appraisal for evaluation and developmental needs. We should not combine. We should clearly define and communicate to the employee that I am doing your performance appraisal for evaluation purpose. I will increase or decrease your salary as the following the result of this appraisal. You should communicate this clearly. Or in other scenario, you will communicate him very clearly that this is for developmental purpose. We will not alter your salary. We will identify your developmental need and we will train you if need arises. Then use job-related performance criteria. Of course, we should use. Then specifying performance standard. We should specify the standard. We should not be, there should not be ambiguity in our mind that what should be the standard. Then we can use appropriate performance data. We can improve superior subordinate relationship. We can provide timely and continuous ongoing feedback. We can use upward appraisal. As I told you, appraisal by the customers or students, appraise the teachers. We can use multiple rates and we can train the appraiser. Appraiser should be trained that how should the appraisal be done. And there should be a process for appeal. If somehow you have appraised an employee and you have given him poor marks, the employee can appeal, appeal that that he should be reappraised, or he can appeal that there is probably some uh, something wrong in the appraisal system. So that process should be there for appealing. So this is end of my lecture. Thank you very much.